There's a certain kind of discipline that never fractures. Not when you're running on empty. Not when everything falls apart. Not when every fiber of your being wants to quit. And today, you're about to uncover the ancient blueprint that forges unbreakable warriors. Ever questioned how Shinobi survived for months alone in the wilderness? How they trained in absolute secrecy for years without detection? How they upheld unwavering discipline without apps, alarms, or motivational speakers? The secret has nothing to do with willpower. It's rooted in something they term ninpo, the way of the unseen warrior. Once you grasp the 5 pillars of this system, you'll realize the discipline you've been attempting to build was founded on shaky ground. The Shinobi recognized something about human nature that modern science only confirmed centuries later. Our brains aren't wired for discipline, they're wired for survival. And that's exactly why their methods work when everything else collapses. But there's a cost. This path isn't for those who merely wish to experiment. It demands sacrifice. The sacrifice of the weaker self that undermines your own promises. Before I reveal how this system functions in practice, I'd encourage you to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss future content. Many thanks for your attention. Now let's dive back in. Chapter 1. Feudal Japan, Eager Prefecture, 1540. A 14-year-old named Tishi, known throughout the village by the unfortunate moniker Tishi the Lazy, existed. This boy had dreamed of becoming a shinobi since the first time he glimpsed shadows gliding over rooftops at night. But he had one massive issue. He was utterly hopeless. Each day he'd awaken vowing to train. Today I'll begin. He'd attempt 3 push-ups, tire out, and retreat to eat. He'd resolve to meditate, sit for 2 minutes, lose focus, and stand up. He'd swear to practice with his wooden sword, swing it 5 times, feel the ache in his arms, and quit. The cycle was relentless. Monday morning, today is the day. Monday afternoon, maybe tomorrow will be better. Tuesday, I completely forgot I'd promised anything. His father, a blacksmith with calloused hands and zero tolerance for fantasies, would say, "Tishi, shinobi are myths. Ghosts parents invent to frighten children. You'll learn my trade and abandon this foolishness." Tishi's father knew shinobi were real. He also knew of a secret mountain school. He knew its location, but never shared it with his son, always feigning disbelief because he didn't trust Tishi and hoped to rid him of this absurd notion. But Tishi couldn't let go. Every night, he'd gaze at the mountains where the hidden school lay. Every morning, he'd think, what if I truly try this time? And every afternoon, he'd surrender again until the day everything shifted. But not as he expected. Returning from the forest after another training session, 20 minutes of playing with sticks, Tishi spotted a man blocking the path. An ordinary-looking fellow, plain attire, nothing remarkable except his eyes. Those eyes seemed to pierce right through him. "You want to be a shinobi?" It wasn't a question, it was a verdict. Tishi felt his blood chill. I was just... You were wasting time again. The man stepped closer. "How many times have you promised yourself today would be different?" Silence. Because Tishi knew the answer. Hundreds, maybe thousands. "Come with me." The man turned and headed toward the mountains. "If you can keep up, I'll show you the school. If not, you go home and accept a life as a blacksmith." Tishi looked up at the peak. A 3-hour brutal climb. He'd never sustained anything for 3 straight hours in his life. But something about this moment felt different. Maybe it was the stark honesty in the man's tone. Maybe it was the realization this was his only shot. Or maybe it was simply exhaustion from being weak. "I'll go." The first 20 minutes were manageable. At 40, his legs burned. An hour in, his mind flooded with the same old excuses. "This is insane. You're not built for this. Try again tomorrow." But the man marched on, never glancing back, never slowing, never speaking. 2 hours later, Tishi was crawling, hands and knees scraping the ground, tears streaming, his entire body screaming for him to quit. And in that moment, he grasped something that would alter everything. The pain didn't matter. The exhaustion didn't matter. What mattered was the choice he'd made at the trailhead. He'd said he would, and warriors honor their word. Tishi forced himself up and kept moving. 3 hours and 15 minutes later, he reached the summit. He collapsed, vomited, and blacked out. When he awoke, he was inside a temple. Dark wood, incense smoke, complete stillness. The man sat before him. You completed the first lesson of Ninpo without realizing it. Welcome to the Koga School, Chapter 2, The Death of the Weak Self. Tishi woke before dawn to a bell's clang, not a gentle chime, but a bronze resonance that seemed to rattle his skull. He looked around. 15 other young men stood already, clad in matching dark outfits, eyes fixed forward. The master, the same mountain man, stood at the hall's center. In Ninpo, there are no attempts. Only 2 states exist: you are, or you are not. From this moment, you are students. Students rise when the bell rings. No debate. Tishi peered out the window, still dark. But sensei, what time? The master silenced him with a glare that could melt steel. Questions are thoughts. Thoughts breed hesitation. Hesitation breeds death. The bell rings. You rise. That's final. The first week was agony. The bell rang early. An hour of silent meditation. 2 hours of grueling physical drills. Another 2 hours of strategy study. Stealth practice until dusk. Sleep. Repeat. Tishi wanted to quit daily. But here was the difference: he couldn't. Because in Ninpo, when you enter, you don't make a private commitment. You take a public vow before everyone. On day 1, each student had to stand before the whole community and declare, I am a student of the ninja way. My word is my life. If I break my word, I am nothing. The entire school witnessed it. 15 other students heard it. The teacher recorded it in a book. Identity shifted in that instant. Do you grasp what occurred there? Tishi didn't promise to try. He declared himself. And when your identity changes publicly, your primal brain interprets failure as social extinction. Our ancestors who lost tribal trust were cast out, left to perish alone. Your brain still operates this way. When you make a public declaration and fail, an ancient part of your brain reads it as a survival threat. The Shinobi understood this centuries before neuroscience. Not scientifically, perhaps, but philosophically. Their creed was simple: don't break your oath. On day 3, Tishi woke up shattered. Every muscle ached. His mind immediately whispered, you're hurt. You need rest. One day won't matter. He glanced around. All the other students were already upright. No one complained. No one bargained. And crucially, if he stayed down, it wouldn't just be his own failure. It would be everyone's knowledge. The shame of breaking his oath before the group far outweighed the physical pain. He stood. On the 5th night, during dinner, a student muttered, man, we can't do this. This pace will kill us. The master overheard. He rose. Pack your things, you're expelled. The boy went pale. But I didn't do anything, I just said. You sowed doubt. Doubt is poison. In Ninpo, thoughts are actions. You've acted against your oath. Leave. The student left, never to return. And no one at the school ever complained again, because everyone understood the oath wasn't decoration. It was the foundation supporting everything. But Tishi soon realized the oath only solved half the battle. Even with social pressure, even with the fear of expulsion, he still fought an internal war daily. That's when the master introduced the second pillar of Ninpo Rei, the principle of unchanging rhythm. Chapter 3, the rhythm that doesn't break. You know that silent torment playing in your head every morning? Should I work out now or after breakfast? Wake at 5 or 6. Do it today or tomorrow when I have more energy. You think you're being flexible. In truth, you're draining mental energy on micro decisions that weaken you before you even start. The master called Tishi after 2 weeks. You're still hesitating. I see it in your eyes every morning. Tishi was startled. But sensei, I get up every day. I've never failed. Standing up isn't enough. You're still deciding whether to stand up. As long as there's decision, there's weakness. We must kill decision. The master explained. In true Ninpo, time isn't variable. It's constant. The bell rings in the morning because the universe needs constants. When you remove time as a variable, you remove negotiation. Your body is foolish, said the master. But it's a foolish body that learns patterns. If you wake at different times daily, your body never knows what to expect. It fights you every time. But when the time is fixed, your body starts preparing before the bell even rings. Tishi didn't believe it until the 3rd week. On day 19, he woke just before the bell. His body had learned. On day 25, his eyes opened naturally 2 minutes early. On day 30, he was fully awake, feet on the floor, mind clear, before any sound. His body had developed an internal clock, not because he was special, but because the pattern was unbreakable. But the fixed schedule only solved when to wake. Tishi discovered a new battlefield. What to do during training. Some days he wanted to focus on strength, others on speed. Sometimes he felt inspired to climb rocks, other times he craved sword work. His mind found a fresh loophole for negotiation. Since he couldn't argue about when to train, he started arguing about how to train. The master noticed this too. You're creating chaos where there should be form. In Ninpo, we practice K to perfect form, repeated endlessly. And then he shared something that sounded absurd. For 100 days, you'll do the exact same training sequence, the same movements, same order, same repetitions, 0 variation. Tishi was baffled. But sensei, won't I get bored? Won't I stop progressing? Boredom is the ego-resisting transformation. You only evolve when practice becomes so automatic that your consciousness can finally observe the invisible details. Chapter 4. The Form That Frees. Let me tell you what no one says about variety. You think variety keeps things interesting, but variety is actually where discipline dies. Every day you change your workout. Your brain has to make micro decisions. Should I squat or run today? How long on each exercise? Which technique first? Each decision is a crack where your old patterns seep back in. Tishi began his personal Shugyo period, 100 days of sameness. The sequence was brutal: 50 push-ups, 100 squats, 30 minutes of sword practice with specific kata, 20 minutes of breathing techniques. Same order, same place, same time, every single day. First week, his mind screamed for novelty. This is stupid. You're human, not a machine. Vary things or you'll go crazy. By the 2nd week, other students started commenting, "Man, you're turning into a robot." Where's the creativity? The self-expression? The master overheard and laughed. Creativity without foundation is just organized chaos. You want to express yourself. First master the form. Only then will you have something to express. The 3rd week was pure psychological warfare. Every day, Tishi had to battle the voice saying, "Do something different today, just for today, so it's not boring." But he remembered the expelled student. He remembered his oath. He stuck to the form. In the 4th week, something strange began. Mental stamina waned, not because Tishi got stronger, but because stamina wears out faster than discipline. His brain realized there was no negotiation available. No matter how much it screamed for variation, the answer was always no. Eventually, the brain stopped screaming. Week 6 was when magic struck. Mid-push-up, Tishi realized he wasn't thinking. His body moved through the sequence on its own, like water flowing along its usual path. It wasn't boredom, it was freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of constant decision-making. In the 8th week, during sword practice, he noticed for the first time a microscopic detail in his wrist movement. Something invisible if his mind had been busy choosing which technique to practice. The master was watching. Now you see, When form becomes automatic, consciousness can finally pay attention. A neuroscientist at Kyoto University, studying behavioral automation for 18 years, discovered something revolutionary. When you repeat an exact sequence of actions for about 66 days in the same context, the basal ganglia take over movement control. The prefrontal cortex is freed for higher functions. The behavior becomes as automatic as breathing. On day 45, Tishi developed a fever. His body was weak, his head heavy, everything hurt. The temptation was obvious. I'll skip today. No one trains when sick. I'll come back tomorrow when I'm better. This is where everyone gives up. Where you gave up before, because you believe the all or nothing lie. If I can't do it perfectly, I don't do it at all. If I can't do it completely, I wait until I can. This logic seems sensible, but it's actually the silent killer of any consistency you've ever tried to build. Tishi went to his master. Sensei, I'm sick. Should I rest today? The master looked at him as if he'd said the most foolish thing imaginable. Rest is different from giving up. If you need true rest, rest. But you're not asking about rest. You're asking for permission to create a gap. What's the difference? A river never stops flowing. During a drought, it becomes a trickle. During a storm, a torrent. But it never stops. The moment it stops, it's no longer a river, just a hole where water used to be. Your practice is the same. And then the master taught the third pillar of Ninpo, Muku practice without gaps. Feeling weak today? Do 10 push-ups instead of 50. Meditate for 5 minutes instead of 20. But do something, because momentum is more valuable than perfection. Tishi did half his normal training. It was terrible, imperfect, but completely sufficient, because he maintained momentum. He didn't create a gap. The next day, as the fever subsided, his body returned to full training as if nothing had happened. If he'd skipped entirely, his body would have read it as a pattern change. It would have resisted the next day. Well, you skipped yesterday. Why not skip today too? But because he never created the gap, the pattern remained intact. Day 7, a massive storm. The training hall flooded. Tishi thought he finally had a legitimate excuse. He sought out his master. Sensei, where do we train today? The master pointed to the covered patio. There. But it's raining. The sensei replied, so what? Do you think enemies only attack on sunny days? Do you think missions only happen when you're comfortable? Tishi trained in the rain. Soaked clothes, slippery ground, bone-chilling cold. But he trained without a break. Chapter 5. The invisible preparation. But Tishi was about to discover something that nearly broke him. Because no matter how strong your oath, how fixed your schedule, how perfect your form, there's one type of obstacle that brings everyone down. The obstacle you didn't foresee. Day 80. Tishi's father showed up at school. Family emergency. He needed to return to the village immediately. Tishi panicked, not because of the emergency, but because of his training. 20 days left until the 100 days. If he broke now, the master stopped him before he could speak. Do you think obstacles ask permission? Do you think life respects your 100 days? But sensei, I promised to complete. You promised to practice without gaps. You didn't promise it would be convenient. This is your true test, not when everything is perfect, but when everything goes wrong. And then the master taught the fourth pillar, Zini, prior preparation. A true shinobi is never caught off guard because he's already decided his answers before the questions arise. When X happens, he does Y without thinking, without hesitation. He simply executes. The master had Tishi sit down and list every possible obstacle: travel, illness, visitors, emergencies, extreme weather, injury. For each, they wrote down the exact response: traveling, Great Dawn Road workout, sick, Hotham injury, focus on the legs, rain, covered patio, family emergency, essential 15-minute workout. Tishi returned to the village. He spent 3 days helping his family. But every day at 400 a.m., he woke up. He did a condensed version, 20 push-ups, 10 minutes of meditation, basic sword kata. The neighbors thought he'd lost his mind. Your father needs help, and you're playing with a sword at 4 a.m. But Tishi understood something they never would. He was helping his father all day. The morning training didn't take anything away from that. It kept his identity intact, so he could be strong for his family. He returned to school on day 83. The teacher asked, "How many days did you miss?" "None, sensei." The master smiled for the first time. "Now you're beginning to understand." A behavioral psychologist at the University of Tokyo, studying decision-making for 22 years, found that when you pre-decide your actions, you remove decision fatigue from critical moments. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for willpower, remains intact to execute rather than decide. This can boost success rates by up to 300%. Day 95 days left until the 100 days of Shugyo. Tishi was different. Everyone at school noticed. He didn't talk about training. He simply trained. He didn't promise to wake early. He simply woke up. He didn't need motivation. The practice happened on its own. Other students began whispering, "How does he do it? How does he never fail?" One older student replied, "He doesn't, he is." Day 100 arrived. Tishi completed the sequence for the 100th consecutive time. No flaws, no gaps, no exceptions. The bell rang, marking the end of Shugyo. He expected relief. He expected to want to celebrate. But he felt only silence. A deep, strange silence. The master called him. "How do you feel?" "Empty, sensei," but not in a bad way. Like something heavy has been lifted. What came out was the version of you that needed to decide. Now you've reached the 5th pillar of Ninpo, the mindless mind. Chapter 6. The mind that doesn't hesitate. Mushin means no mind, the master explained. But it doesn't mean stupidity. It means no ego, no hesitation, no inner conflict between what you should do and what you want to do. When a samurai attacks with a sword, you don't have time to think, should I dodge or block? If you think, you die. The response must be automatic, instantaneous, without the interference of the hesitating ego. That's what you built in those 100 days, not just a workout habit. You killed the part of you that negotiates with yourself. Tishi understood. In the past 30 days, he hadn't had a single thought about trading. No, what if I skip today? No, maybe tomorrow would be better. The practice simply happened like a heartbeat, like breathing. The master continued, "Now comes the real test. Your 100 days are over. The fixed form is over. The question is, will you return to who you were, or have you become something different?" Tishi didn't need to think. "I'll continue." Why? Because I'm no longer someone who trains. I'm someone who is. The master nodded. "Welcome to true Ninpo." 3 months later, Tishi was no longer a student. He was a shinobi. Not because he received a certificate, but because something fundamental in his structure had changed. His discipline frightened the other students. He never talked about training, never complained, never negotiated. He was simply the kind of person who got things done. One day, a new student asked, "How do you manage to never fail?" Tishi gave the same answer his master had given him. "Failure is no longer an option in my mind. Not because I'm strong, because I've removed the option." The student was confused. How do you remove an option? You sacrifice the person you were, the person who negotiated, the person who hesitated. And when that person dies, what's left is only the warrior who kept his word. But Tishi's transformation didn't stop with training. Something much deeper had happened. And when people started to notice, they didn't say, "How impressive." They said, "This isn't normal." And that's exactly what you need to hear. Chapter 7. The Warrior Who Scares. 6 months after completing Shugyo, Tishi was sent on his first real mission, infiltrating an enemy castle to retrieve documents. The mission lasted 7 days. 7 days without adequate sleep, without sufficient food, without comfort. Everything that could have gone wrong did. But Tishi completed the mission. He returned with the documents. When the other shinobi asked how he endured, he said, "I did what needed to be done." But the truth was deeper. During those 7 days, not once did Tishi think, "I can't take it," because that voice had long since died. In its place, there was only clarity, only action. The master called him over later. People will start looking at you differently. They'll call you obsessive. They'll say you're extreme, that you need balance. Do you know why? No, sensei. Because your discipline exposes their weakness. You are living proof that all the excuses they make are just choices, and that makes them uncomfortable. And the master was right. As Tishi's reputation grew, people's reactions shifted. Some admired him, others feared him, but most reacted with something between discomfort and resentment. He's not normal. No one needs to be so disciplined. That can't be healthy. But Tishi had learned something crucial. When your discipline scares others, you're finally on the right level. Normal people get normal results, but warriors, true warriors, operate on a different level. A level where "I can't" doesn't exist in the vocabulary. One day, Tishi was training in the courtyard at 400 a.m. when a group of new students walked by. One muttered, "Man, that's scary. He never stops." Tishi listened and smiled, because he remembered the boy he was 5 years ago. The boy who couldn't do 3 push-ups. The boy everyone called lazy. That boy was no more, and in his place stood a warrior. This doesn't make you a better person. It makes you a different person. A person others will look at and think, "That's not human." And when you hear those words, you know you finally killed the weak version of yourself. Because you see, the system isn't complicated. It has 5 pillars. First, ketsui, the public oath. You stop making private promises that no one knows about, and start making public declarations that change your identity. Not, "I will try," but "I am." Second, rei, the unchanging rhythm. You choose a fixed schedule and remove time as a variable. Your body learns the pattern. The negotiation about when disappears. Third, kata, the perfect form. You do exactly the same thing every day for at least 100 days. No variation, no creativity. Just repetition until the practice becomes automatic. Fourth, muku, practice without gaps. You never create a complete gap, no matter what. Emergency, reduced version, illness, half practice. But never zero, because zero breaks momentum. Fifth, zini, prior preparation. You list every possible obstacle and decide your response. When X happens, you do Y. No thinking, no negotiating, just execution. These 5 pillars transformed Tishi from a boy who couldn't do 3 push-ups into a shinobi who accomplished impossible missions. Not because he got stronger, but because he killed the part of him that hesitated. And now I ask you, are you ready for this kind of transformation? Because I won't lie to you. This path isn't comfortable. It's not easy. It's not for those who just want to improve a little. The Ninpo system will require you to sacrifice a version of yourself. The version that negotiates, the version that hesitates, the version that has 1,000 excuses about why today isn't the right day. In that person's place, a warrior will be born. Someone who doesn't need cheap motivation. Because cheap motivation is for those who are still deciding. A warrior is someone who doesn't break commitments, because commitments are part of identity, not part of a to-do list. People will look at you differently. They'll call you obsessive. They'll say you need to relax, that you're overreacting, that this isn't healthy. Great. That means you're on the right track, because the discipline that scares others is the only discipline worth having. The discipline that makes people uncomfortable is the only discipline that produces extraordinary results. The question isn't whether the system works. The question is, do you have the courage to commit completely? Don't try. Don't test. Commit. Choose a habit. Make your public pledge. Choose your fixed schedule. Define your perfect form. Commit to 100 days without gaps. Solve every obstacle. And then watch what happens when you stop negotiating with yourself. Tishi wasn't special. He was just a weak boy who decided to sacrifice himself so a warrior could be born. You can do the same. If you enjoyed this video, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive future content. Remember, discipline is only bad when there's little of it. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for your attention. Until the next video,